I believe Darwin's theory of evolution is the only theory that can't account adequately for the phenomenon of life. Why only?
Well, that's very interesting. There is a chapter in the book called Universal Darwinism, which advocates exactly that point of view. Darwinism means natural selection, evolution by natural selection. Not all evolution is governed by natural selection, even here. Plenty of evolution is random with respect to natural selection, it's random drift. But adaptive evolution, evolution in the direction of improvement, getting better at doing something, like getting better at flying or seeing or swimming or digging or climbing or thinking, that is what natural selection is extremely good at doing. And no other theory so far has ever been proposed that can do that. The only one remotely competitive is Lamarckism, which is the combination of the inheritance of acquired characteristics plus the principle of use and disuse. Use and disuse means the more you use a bit of yourself, the bigger it gets. And this is true of muscles, for example. The more, that's what training's all about. The more you use certain muscles, the bigger they get. If you couple that with the principle of inheritance of acquired characteristics, somebody who goes to the gym and builds up muscles then has a child with a tendency to develop bigger muscles. That would be Lamarckian evolution. And what I argue in the chapter is that although it works for muscles, it doesn't work for the vast majority. It cannot work for the vast majority of adaptations. Things like eyes, for example, which get better at seeing. There's no possible way in which simply seeing makes your eyes better at it. Lenses don't become clearer because photons wash through them. You don't develop an iris diaphragm to open and shut, to let in the right amount of light, just by simply exercise. Natural selection does that effortlessly. Natural selection does any improvement in the body, anywhere, no matter how deeply buried in the biochemistry of the cells. If it's an improvement, it improves the chances of the animal surviving and reproducing. Natural selection will grab it and will build it in to future generations. Natural selection can produce any kind of improvement you can imagine. Lamarckism simply cannot do it. So I dispute the claim that's been made by various biologists that says Lamarckism is a fine theory, it might work on other planets, it just happens not to work on this planet because we don't have inheritance of acquired characteristics. That's wrong. Even on a planet where you had inheritance of acquired characteristics, you could not get complex adaptation like eyes and ears and brains even, by Lamarckian means. So I go in the chapter, I go through all the alternatives that have ever been suggested and show not only that they don't work, but they cannot work, they couldn't work. So there remains the possibility that there's some theory nobody's thought of. And that, I cannot rule that out. All I can do is put my shirt on. I would bet a large sum that if life is ever discovered on other planets, I would bet everything I have that it will be Darwinian life in some sense. It wouldn't be in detail, it wouldn't be similar. I mean, it wouldn't be the same, it would be similar. There would have to be some sort of genetics, but it might not be DNA, that kind of thing.
It seems you connect atheism with acceptance of the theory of evolution. Can't atheism stand alone without the slightest nod to evolution, as if the theory was never proposed?
Oh goodness, I doubt that. Because we've got this stupendous problem of explaining our existence, I mean the existence of all living things. Anybody who thinks that underestimates the colossal improbability of a living organism. I mean, think about any living organism you like, but just take a bird, for example. It's a beautifully constructed machine that can fly and walk and peck and reproduce. Highly complicated machinery, devastatingly complicated, everything is geared to this one task of surviving and reproducing in the particular way that birds do it. Fish do it another way, monkeys do it another way. Abandon that and say, I'm still an atheist, would be a very, very hard thing to do. I once had an argument with an eminent philosopher. He's now dead, so I can mention him, A.J. Ayer, Sir Alfred Ayer. And I said it would be very hard to be an atheist before Darwin. And he said, why? What's the problem? And I wrote a book, actually, to try to explain to him. It was called The Blind Watchmaker, to explain to him what the problem was. I think, and you just simply, if you think that, you just don't get what an enormously complicated thing a living organism is, let alone the entire panoply of life.
I'll throw a bonus one in off that, which is, I think I heard you partially answer this with Sam Harris in LA a couple months ago, but when you had your stroke about a year ago, did it challenge any of your beliefs or lack of beliefs?
No, it reinforced my faith in scientific medicine. I was very well treated in
So you didn't go to a shaman?
No. Some of you may have read Dan Dennett's magnificent article called "Thank Goodness," which he wrote after when he was recovering from a very, very serious heart problem, when he very, very nearly died. And he said that various people had written to him saying they were praying for him and things like that. So he replied, "And did you also sacrifice a goat?" But he then went on. No, actually, I think he said he was too polite to give that reply. But he then went on to say, what I do want to thank is not thank God. I want to thank the surgeons who worked on me for 8 hours, the man who invented the electroencephalogram, the man who invented the MRI scanner, the anesthetist, all the nurses, the people in the laundry who coped with my blood-stained sheets. He gave a great list of people that he thanked. And it's a wonderful essay. I recommend you read it. It's called "Thank Goodness." Google it.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Dan Dennett, because I think this is partly related to some of the work he does. Do you believe that quantum physics allows for the possibility of free will, namely physics is not necessarily deterministic?
Well, the principle of indeterminacy the Heisenberg's principle has been widely misunderstood as being a kind of get-out, a sort of give us free will. I mean, I hate the free will question, I must confess, because I'm not a philosopher, and I read some of the stuff on it, but I'm not good at answering the question. I rather tend to revert to Christopher Hitchens' answer to the question, do you believe in free will? I have no choice.
I know which question I'm going to do last, so I'm going to put that one there. How do you evaluate the contradiction between capitalism's need for scientific development on one hand and its insatiable drive for competition and profit that interestingly seems to cling to mystification and religious thinking for its cover? That is a loaded question if I've ever heard one.
Well, no, but it's loaded with complication. Let me have another.
Yeah, why don't you field that one? You guys could talk amongst yourselves for a moment.
Capitalism's need for scientific development on the one hand, and its insatiable drive for competition and profit. So it's a contradiction between the need for scientific development on the one hand. Capitalism needs scientific development on the one hand. On the other hand, it has an insatiable drive for competition and profit, which the questioner thinks is incompatible with scientific development.
Whoever wrote this question is having the moment of their life right now. Richard Dawkins examining my question.
Seems to cling to mystification and religious thinking for its cover. Drive for competition and profit. I don't get why competition and profit, the drive for competition and profit, seems to cling to mystification and religious thinking for its cover. I think the author of this question has written a book about this. which I would be interested to read, but for the moment I don't. Yeah.
Fair enough, fair enough. Put that one over there. We touched on this a little bit at the beginning. If you want kids interested in science, teach how we came from fish, not lived in one. So what do you need to do?
Yeah, very good.
Well, I like that, there you go. So what do you need to do to make the theory of evolution the law of evolution? Cosmetics can have doctor-approved, cosmetics can be doctor-approved. Can't scientists have the word law approved too?
Yes, I like that. I'm not sure I'm so keen on the word law in this case. I'd just rather use the word fact. Evolution is a fact. We must stop calling it a theory because it just simply misleads people. The current orthodox way to handle this is to say scientists use the word theory in a different way from lay people, but that just doesn't seem to work. We can't get that across. And it's only partially true because scientists do use the word theory as a synonym for hypothesis as well. And so, although it is true that something like the theory of gravity is not just a hypothesis that might be true and might be false. Nevertheless, scientists do use the word theory to mean something that is tentative and might be wrong, might be right. So I want to stop calling evolution a theory. Just stop it. Lovely sketch by, who's that comedian who does the telephone? Who? Bob Newhart. He plays a psychiatrist, and he has a woman who comes to him because she has a morbid fear of being buried alive in a box. And so he says, well, it'll cost you $5. I want you to listen very carefully to the following I'm just going to say 2 words, and I want you to take very careful note. So she gets ready, and he says, stop it! So we're going to stop calling evolution a theory. Evolution is a fact. Michael Roos said it's a fact, fact, fact. It's a fact that is established as surely and securely as any fact in science. Law, I'm not so sure I'd call it a law. I think that's going to confuse people in other ways. I have used the word law in this context in my chapter in the book on universal Darwinism, which I mentioned earlier. I think I said something like Darwinian natural selection may turn out to have the same universal lawful properties as the great laws of physics. Physicists are committed to the view that the laws of physics apply all over the universe. So I didn't mind using the word law there, but I think it's confusing to say it's not a theory, it's a law. I'd rather say it's a fact. It's a fact that we observe, it's a fact that we understand.
All right, well, first off, I know you're going to be taking some time to sign copies of your book, which came out in the United States today.
Today, that's right.
Yes. So Richard will be doing that after, and I thought this would be an appropriate one to end on. Richard, how do I respond to a friend when she says, quote, everything is good or bad energy? She says bananas are bad energy, so don't eat them. Putting bananas aside for a second, good or bad energy? Is there such thing as good or bad energy? What do you do?
I wonder if the friend is here. Energy is one of those much misused words. It has a precise meaning. It's the capacity to do work. And it's an important concept in physics. It is misused horribly by mystics and charlatans who are all the time trying to sort of balance your energies and balance your chakras and things like that. If you divide the world into things that have good energy and bad energy, then the kindest thing I can say is you're simply misusing the word energy. And to be slightly more unkind, I would say bollocks.
We'll give it up for Richard Dawkins.